As a teenager, I was ashamed of being poor and Mexican. But once I gained political consciousness, I turned that shame into pride. And over my life, everything that I have accomplished, and I have accomplished a lot over the years, it has been based and fueled by my pride of my working class roots and my Mexican heritage. My story, like all of your stories, doesn't begin with me. It begins with my parents. Here they are, a good-looking couple. I don't know, the man looks like somebody I know. So my parents were born in Mexico in a small rancho, Sajo Grande, in the beautiful state of Michoacan. They grew up in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and they were part of what Karl Marx talks about with the peasant class. They worked the land. They started to work young, 10, 12 years old. They worked from sunup to sundown. And in the 1950s, my father first arrived in the United States as a bracero, as a guest worker during the bracero program between the United States and Mexico. Later, because of a family feud that was going on in the rancho, it was like the Hatfields and the McCoys, Mexican style. My family was forced to relocate from the rancho to Tijuana, La Colonia Libertad. They grew up, they settled in a canyon. And when I say family, I don't mean like mom, dad, 2.5 kids. I mean abuelo y abuela y tío y tía. I have 10 aunts and uncles. Each one has 10 kids. I have 100 first cousins. So when we have parties, luckily half of them are Maria and Jose, so I could recognize them. Maria? My mother was an entrepreneur. She was brilliant. She was a transborder worker. When we lived in Tijuana, she cleaned homes in San Diego, so she would go back and forth. And my parents, both of them, they came with work permits. So my father with the bracero program, and my mother with the work permit, cleaning houses, for the middle class and the rich in San Diego. And in the back of the card, it didn't say that you couldn't have kids in the United States. So my mother was a visionary. So when she was pregnant with me, she decided that Alvaro was going to be born in the United States. So I was born in Sacramento. I don't know how she got from Tijuana to Sacramento, but, but that's how the comadre network works, It's like UPS doesn't have anything on that comadre network. So 40 days after I was born, my mother returned to Tijuana, where my brothers and my sisters were at. I mean, there's 8 of us. So I grew up for the first 4 years of my life in Tijuana. And we grew up dirt poor. And they call it dirt poor for a reason, because there's nothing but dirt. And the funny thing about growing up poor, if there is a funny thing, is that when you're poor and everybody else around you is poor, you don't even know that you're poor. You don't even know that you're Mexican, because everybody's the same. We're all the same. So eventually, my parents, my uncles and aunts, they relocated to Hollywood. This is in the 1970s. They relocated to a 3-story home. And literally, I'm not kidding here, people. There was like 30 people in one house. We even had pollos in the basement, and we had to feed the pollos, but that's another story. And my mother was a little bit tired of living with so many people. She wanted her own independence, her own home. So she applied for public assistance in Boyle Heights. So she ended up relocating the family, and my father came along. to public housing in Ramona Gardens, also known as Big Hazard for the gang. My mother, like most immigrants that arrive in the United States, they're unaware of the customs, they're unaware of the bureaucracy, they don't understand how it works. And she didn't understand, and I don't blame her for it, but she didn't understand that she applied to the most violent public housing projects in the United States. I mean, this mural right here was our welcome to the projects, somebody getting shot. And for us, all of the kids from the projects, we ended up going to the same elementary school. Now, the expectations were so low that when somebody graduated elementary, they killed a pig and everything. They had like a big old pachanga. Because there was no guarantee that they were going to go to high school. Talk about uncharted territories. Going to high school was like going to Mars. It just didn't happen. For us, it was about survival. It was about not getting beat up. It was about protecting each other. But I was lucky because I was gifted in math. So that was my gift. And my brother was gifted in art. So that we had a talent. And I had a teacher. Her name was Miss Rose. She looked like Ronald McDonald, so I used to call her Miss Ronald McDonald. And I had finished all the math books. And in 6th grade, she taught me algebra. And during that time period, now we're talking late 70s, early 80s, there was a busing integration program where they wanted to integrate the white schools with the minority schools, and they bus kids. So for junior high school, half of us went to Mount Gleason Junior High in Sunland, Tujunga. It's about an hour away from Boyle Heights, and the other half went to El Sereno in East LA. It was kind of a random thing, and I got selected to go to Sunland, Tujunga. And everybody in the projects was poor, everybody was Mexican, so there was no problem with identity. We didn't have an issue with that. And we didn't even have an issue being poor because it goes back to the theory that I have. If everybody's the same, we don't feel it. But when I got there on the first day, the white kids started throwing like rocks at us. And it was like, we were like in Birmingham, Alabama. They started calling us names, and they were calling us like wetback and lowrider and beaner. The beaner I could never understand. It's like, don't you eat beans? It's like, that one, it was like, but I'm a kid, I understand violence, I understand displacement, I understand all this stuff, but I don't understand racism. It was something that was foreign to me. I couldn't understand why we were being judged. But my mother, she was a visionary, like I said. She was brilliant. No formal education, like my father. And one day she tells my father, I want you to take Salomon, my brother, older brother, and Alvaro to go work in Malibu as day laborers. I was 13 and he was 15. And I was a good kid, and I don't understand why she was doing this to me. Because I was a good kid, I was smart, but I was lazy. The Americanization, the TV. I was so lazy, I had the TV schedule memorized. Like on Tuesday, Happy Days, and on Thursday, Three's Company. Like I had it literally memorized. And we get there. My father woke us up at 5 in the morning, and we take 2 buses, and we get there, and they're making us work. And I could not believe it. My arms were hurting, and then after a while, my father goes, okay, Alvaro, let's go. And I thought it was it, that was it. Like, let's go home now. And then he goes, no, it's lunchtime. And I said, oh my God. So I was right there like crying, like, oh my God. I said to myself, I'm too lazy to work. I'm going to go to college. So that was... And so for us, violence was omnipresent. It was there. My father carried a gun everywhere he went. The gangs carried guns, and the police carried guns. And to tell you the truth, we weren't even afraid of the gang because we grew up with them. They were our friends. We were more afraid of the police. And when I was 16 years old. I was teaching myself how to drive, and I got pulled over. I made a rolling stop, and instead of asking me for my ID or whatever, he pulled out a gun on me. And that was the first time I saw like a gun like literally pointed at me. I've carried a gun before, but not like directly towards me. And I was a little bit in shock. But after a while, I had gotten accustomed to it in the project. So I go home. My mom asked me, what happened? I told her. Once again, the comadre network, it's just like really, it got to her. By the time I got home, we didn't have internet back then. It was like, ¿qué quieres de comer, mijo? Oh, frijoles, So when I was in high school, my friend Hector, he found this application to go to Upper Bound at Occidental College. And at first I was reluctant because I didn't know how to read and write at grade level. I was gifted in math, but when it came to reading and writing, I wasn't prepared. So I got the application and I said, no, I'm not going to apply. And I threw it in the trash. And then he was so desperate, just like me, to get out, but he was more desperate. He got the application, he ironed it. And then so we sent it out, and I thought I wasn't going to get in. I got in, I got into this residential program. For the first time, people that looked like me were telling me that I can go to college. So because of that belief, I was admitted to UCLA as a freshman, as a math major, in 1985. That's where I met my wife. After she took the restraining order off, we got married, but that's another story. I have like so many TED Talks. I might as well just go next, But with the support of my wife, she supported me, and with her support, I was able to return after spending years of organizing in the community to graduate school, where I received my master's in urban planning at UCLA. And also with their support, she encouraged me to pursue a Ph.D. So I did so at UC Berkeley in city and regional planning. And because of the privilege that I have of being highly educated, I was able to secure a tenure track position here at Cal Poly Pomona. And it's a great university. Recently, the New York Times indicated that we're number 5 in the nation in promoting upward mobility from working class students to join the middle class. So that's a great accomplishment, from our great university. So over the years, as I wrap up, I've been advocating for the poor, los de abajo, people like myself, people that look like me, first generation that go to college, son of immigrants, poor, not having any role models to emulate, by forcing myself to be that role model, for younger people. And people always ask, how do you do it? And I say to myself, I didn't learn to be successful because of the professors at Berkeley or UCLA or my colleagues here at Cal Poly. I learned it from the Mexican, from the immigrant, the risk taker, the person that sacrifices, like my mother, people that give up their dreams so that their children can live a better life. So when people blame the immigrants for America's woes, we have to realize that they deserve dignity and respect, and I dedicate this speech to my mother, to my wife, and my son. Muchas gracias.